So this word mutual sort of came very often when people were sharing. And I think that indicates that somewhere everybody feels reciprocity should be a common value across, that it should be something both parties should feel.
So I think there were certain keywords that we found out from our room. So the words that we've already discussed, this was support, so that, people can make informed decisions. Kindness, Radhika mentioned that, during COVID, they had meal planning services. So it was a community, it was a whole community that was built around that at that point of time.
So yeah, very, very happy to welcome you all. And like I said, today is the 4th roundtable. So as you all know, the topic for today's session is about creating, and I'm borrowing this word from Moses, who could not be here, but creating community constitution. Essentially, what we have seen as community builders is there are certain values and certain rules and certain guidelines that all of us ideally as a community builder should decide and define at least the first version of it before starting the community, and then use that as a framework to take certain decisions around various aspects of community building, whether it's moderation, whether it's what type of events to conduct, how different, what format of these events do you want, what kind of people do you want, what kind of behavior do you want, what kind of seeding do you want to do. So all these decisions are generally driven by this community constitution. Community values essentially helps us to navigate around different decision-making frameworks. Our community values eventually become our differentiator. Now, again, a point mentioned by Manohar in our yesterday discussion. A lot of people might think of values as something where people would consider them as what value is being delivered to the members, but that is different value. Here, when we say values, we are talking about principles. So establishing those core principles on how do we want to treat the community, what is the culture of the community, and it reduces ambiguity, it helps you in handling conflicts, and then these values can be bracketed across intellectual value, cultural value, social value. So try to, when you're thinking of these values, try to use all these frameworks and see what works for you. Now at CommunityHood, we, in fact, before this roundtable, we never thought of writing it down ourselves. And, like I said, we are still learning, we are still early in our journey of a lot of things. And these roundtables also become a way for us to write down these things formally. So when we started writing down, these are some of the values we could come up with. So we are very, very focused on empowering communities. So whatever we do, it has to empower communities. And then the second biggest thing we realized that we want to be resourceful. So you'll see while we try to make our sessions fun and entertaining, but the bigger focus is on making them more resourceful and how can we add more and more value and more learning for you. Then the third one is active inclusiveness, where we actively try to reach out to a lot of you, have one-on-one conversations. A lot of things that we do are volunteer-led, and then friendliness relatively comes below, but it's still very, very important. We want people to be friendly with each other. We don't want people to spam each other. So you would have seen a lot of times we try to tell people that, hey, while you posted, it's great. So we still maintain our friendliness over no spam, but we still tell them that, hey, this is not the right place to write it down. And over time, we've seen a lot of people have learned, they've stopped putting promotional posts in spaces which are open to everyone for different purposes. And the last one is agility. I have specifically kept that because I know that we don't know everything. So we have to be agile and we have to keep evolving in our values. In fact, again, we were discussing yesterday, and I didn't know it, but I was told that CMX, which is one of the largest sort of global community of community builders, they have also changed their values a couple of times. So it is okay to change your values, but have them at some point in time, and don't change them very, very often as well. Now, how do you determine these community values? So try to, if you are building a brand community, definitely try to reach out to the decision makers, try to understand what are the values of the organization, and what are some of these values that you want to take back into the community values. Then decide which are the primary and secondary values. So for us, I would say the top 3 are the primary values and rest of them are secondary values. So that's how I could at least prioritize, and then you sort of only use values which help you make decisions. Don't keep them open-ended. So yeah, these are some of the values that we have, and then these are some of the questions that helped us to come up to write these values. Now, the question that we asked ourselves was, what is important to us as a community? So the topmost thing was being resourceful, provide value for the time spent. So if we are doing a roundtable for 1 hour, I want to make sure that you take back some value for the 1 hour spent. So it is a belief that whatever event that we are doing is a request for time from our members, and we want to give value for that time that you spend here. Then we also want to be a source of social connection between the members. I think we still have to do a better job at this, but we want to do this. And the last one, which probably is a very, very long-term and important goal for us, is we want to provide a sense of belonging to all the members. The next one is how do we want our members to treat each other? And it's a relatively softer, aspect of this question. And it is also about how do you, we as a brand, these are the things which are important, but how do we want our culture to be there, between members? So these are 4 things that we could come up with. We want people to support each other. We want people to respect each other. We want people to empathize with each other, and we want people to welcome each other. And that's why, if you've seen, we try to welcome everyone who joins the community, and I personally make sure that at least I welcome every member, because for me that's very, very important part of the community constitution, the community values. Now, what is the vibe of our community? And if you see, welcoming is the topmost vibe. We want everyone to feel that we are always open for anything that they want to talk about community building or otherwise as well. We want it to be interactive. We want everyone to feel that this community is generous. So if we can help, we will help. Empathy, I think I've covered earlier, and optimism. We feel this is a very young industry in the country, and all of us are doing a great job, but we need that optimism to take that leap of faith where we help each other without thinking of short-term benefits, and things will turn out to be good in long term. And how do we capture these values and communicate our values internally, externally? I think this is a framework that we use very, very often, where we try to understand why we are doing anything and what is in it for me as an organization or as a community builder, and what is it for them. So try to use that to create anything in the, any small decision can be sort of taken up by this, and then use your values to prioritize between, let's say, option A versus option B. So for example, some of the community rituals that we have, like I said, welcome each member. So I make sure that I welcome every member who joins the community. Akshita makes that. And then we've seen that because that has become as a culture, a lot of people actually welcome each other now in the community, which is very, very awesome. Then we do these events, right? And deciding the format of each event is very, very important for us. So like the other day, Madhurima, who is a new volunteer in the community, she was helping us with connections with few people who we can bring in as speakers. And then we were discussing about the format, and the first thing I told her, I want the speaker to not just tell their story, but also we need to think of 5 outcomes that will come for the members by attending this session. So that is a framework we use always, because that's a core value. We want to be resourceful. Whereas someone might be fun, for them fun might be very, very important. So they may want that whatever event experiences that they design, they need to have fun as a core element in the events and in the community. So like I said, we are still heavy on learning, and that's how. One more thing that I do is we feel that the core of our community is these events. So even if you've seen, like, I would invite a lot of new members to attend these events in their intro rooms. That's also a ritual for me, because I feel events is something which is very, very crucial for this community. Very quickly, I want to take this as well, that these values actually help us in defining important goals. They also help us in decision making. Like I said, what type of events we do, what kind of speakers we want, what kind of members we want, what kind of chat rooms we want in the community, what kind of new features we want. So for example, one of the features that we are building at CommunityHood, and of course LikeMinds, who is powering the feature, is as the community scales, it is important that not everyone should receive every notification on certain rooms. So we are in fact coming up with a feature around ability to not spam and have a threaded conversation in some of the larger rooms or the more active ones. And I feel if you're transparent enough in terms of communicating your values, you build trust amongst your members, and that's what we are trying to do right now with this session as well. So I think I'll skip this slide very, very quickly, because most of us know what rules and guidelines are. But one thing is I would recommend is try to write your mission and vision statement as well. So for us, one of the most important thing is we want to be able to help 1 million community builders to run sustainable communities. So that is very, very core part of our value definition, practice, whatever values that we could think of. We felt that these values are a way to reach to that that milestone where 1 million sustainable communities are what we want to drive. And then the larger mission is to reduce human loneliness, which is again something that drives us in some of these things. So today we have 7 volunteers who will be split across these 5 tables. There is Vineet, who is now our OG. Vineet was the one who actually convinced me to start this format of Roundtable. So I won't introduce him again, but very, very quickly, he's a community consultant, very, very actively participating in different initiatives in the Indian community space. Then there is Manohar. Manohar is also a fairly active community builder, has been community builder at a brand community called Mensa, and also has an independent community of his own called 90ml Talks. Then there is Jayashri. Jayashri, she's spending helping consulting a couple of communities as an independent community consultant. Then there is Saurav. Saurav is our newest addition to this volunteer group. He heads community relations at Learn for Cause. Then again, 2 more new additions. Before I introduce them, I want to formally again introduce Nirav. Nirav is founder of Brand Influencers Community. He has yesterday announced, he had announced it in the last roundtable, but yesterday he formally launched his community called School of Solopreneurs, which is seems like a very good program and cohort-based learning for solopreneurs to grow themselves in their respective areas. Then we have 2 more, first-timers, volunteers in this roundtable. One is Priya Bhatt. Priya Bhatt, again, a couple of communities. One as a brand community manager at Springworks. And then there is Madhurima. Madhurima is a community manager at this very interesting company called My Captain. My Captain is a community of students where they get to get mentors which are curated by the My Captain team, and they can learn from the mentors through live sessions and non-live interactions as well. Maybe we can start with Manohar's room.
We could cover 3 out of 5 questions. The last 2 ones were a bit descriptive, so because we had less time left, we thought of parking them, and maybe some of them can share in this segment if time allows. And in response to the first question, the answers that came in were conversation as a value, fun as a value, helping each other as a value, mutual benefit and strong relationships, and finally mutual understanding and mutual trust. So this word mutual sort of came very often when people were sharing, and I think that indicates that that somewhere everybody feels reciprocity should be a common value across, that it should be something both parties should feel, and that's what they expressed. In response to the second one, the answers were a little sharper, where how do we want our members to treat each other? The underlying feeling almost everywhere, even if we chose different words, is respect. Mutual respect is sort of the common thread, sort of non-negotiable value that people want their members to treat each other with. Some call it civility, some call it respect, some call it anti-bullying. I think Shweta mentioned this in the group, which I think should be more actively pronounced, which is respect is one part, but everybody should be aligned when it comes to bullying. No zero tolerance to bullying should be there. And finally, there should be I think Vedahi was somebody who has an interesting community of psychologists, and she said the communication should be honest. I'm not sure if all communities can follow that, but if they do, that's great. But a community of psychologists where people are there for their mental well-being definitely should follow honest communication. And finally, the third one was sort of a little tough, which is what is the vibe of our community. So we used words like semi-formal vibe, house party vibe. Curiosity was something two people said, and what they meant is basically people should engage with each other with a curious intent. They should try to learn from each other. The kind of content that is there in the community should be either driven from curiosity or should serve curiosity. And the vibe should be non-judgmental also in one community's case.
Vineet and I were on the same table, and
Sure.
we had Nick, Keshav, Mahmood, and Uma for some time, Lunkim as well. So we had a very interesting conversation around. I mean, we're all in different phases of community building, and most of them are just about to start building. So we're in the phase of figuring out what should be the values. First of all, what are the kind of audience, and then what kind of values can be attached. Very interesting words came up. So we didn't necessarily follow the whole questionnaire, but then the first one, of course, we said there is ambition, there is perseverance, supportive, and Keshav was very focused on Keshav had this thing where he wants the people to be like adding a lot of value and becoming the best version of themselves. So he said he wants to be doing that. And Mahmood and Alunkim as well, and they're still figuring out. Nick is at a stage where he's from Korea, and he's working
Philippines.
He's from Korea, but he's working in Philippines. Sorry, yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Got it.
So Nick had a very interesting perspective around students and the travel community, but he said they're at a stage where the number of people in their community are growing. So with that, looking at how do values evolve. So we had a very general conversation. We understood a little bit about what we each other do, but most of them are there to learn. Lukim is just like, he's interested in music, but he's also into gender inequity, just starting and just at LikeMinds to learn a lot from each other. So and Vineet had very interesting points as well. So Vineet, over to you.
So Nipul, my story was nobody came to my room, and then I jumped into so that's where it started. It was a pretty interesting conversation. So since this was more of brand community builders story, I was trying to understand what is going on. So it started with Madhurima sharing the value of ambition, supportiveness, and perseverance. Having said that, for folks to get a hang of it, that what exactly is going on, I shared 3 examples. One is of Salesforce, where everybody's part of the Trailblazer community, and they really want to use it better, build over it, sell it better. And the whole idea is like Salesforce is a CRM software, but it drives dollars and cents for your business, and the fund what they have is very strategic. All right, so that was one. Second community which I spoke about, brand community, was Adidas runners. So you don't need to have Adidas merchandise to be part of Adidas runners, and it's about fitness coming together and stuff. Now, what happened after 1.5 years of Adidas runners being coming into place, the merchandise sales simply went up, and every metric on the marketing KPI was being hit through the community being put into picture. And lastly, I gave a lifestyle brand example, which was the Jeep. So the folks who own the Jeep vehicle call themselves Jeepers, although the Jeep company calls them #the Jeep Life, and you're part of the larger collective, making sure that you are doing the conscious effort. So that is where I try to set the context into place, that how exactly are we looking at it from the brand point of view, and that's how the entire conversation was there for 30 minutes. Pretty interesting stuff.
Were we able to find a pattern in the values that people who joined the room had in their communities?
Learning, Madhurima. So there were like few common words which came up. Madhurima, it's over you.
Yeah, no, I think common words that came up were like supportive, and we were looking at trust, empathy to an extent, but very, very different, because I think because it's such diverse brands that we're working with, or such diverse communities we're trying to build, it was really nice to see how like motivation also added to one of the values, whereas some people wanted to somebody termed it as ambition, and then Nick had a very interesting idea that ambition, yes, maybe, but then what about the goals part of it? Like, are we all aligned on the same goals? Are the members going to be aligned on the same goals? So we agreed on certain words, but certain things are very, very distinct for each of the communities. So that's where the conversation led.
Awesome. We'll move to the next table. So we'll call Priya and Saurabh. Priya, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So some of the community values that we discussed, these were like very generic terms, like being kind and polite, don't be loud, and that being empathetic and things like that. But we also discussed about community guidelines, and we found out that communities on WhatsApp, they find it very difficult to set clearly defined guidelines, because these so we had Vikas Dave from the company Khayal, which is a community, so he's building products for senior citizens. So they have a community of people who are more than 55 years of age. So he mentioned that sometimes it gets, the WhatsApp chat community starts getting crowded. So we need to set some guidelines in place before we they set some guidelines before they set their last resort as removing the person from the community. So along with the community values, to make them reflect to your vision, we also need to have some guidelines in place, so we can make that vision clear altogether by the community builders and community members also. So that's what we discussed. Otherwise, the terms like being respectful, and most of the values and guidelines were related to the behavior of the community members, not being rude, being empathetic, supportive, and all of that. So, Saurabh, if you would like to add points to that.
Yeah, of course. So, rightly said by Priya, we have actually discussed, like, we didn't follow the questionnaire which was provided because of course due to the time constraints, but definitely we talked about a lot of problems which those people who have actually joined with us actually shared with us, there were problems related to spamming. I guess it was Amresh, right, So he was he is actually running a community in his WhatsApp. It's not a big community, but again he is facing spamming with different people. So we discuss a lot about solutions of their problems, but again we didn't discuss about the questionnaire. And in total, I guess it was a fruitful conversation. Actually, in my whole discussion, there were people who were actually running a community, and there were people who wanted to run a community, right? So there were two perspective of thoughts which we have actually came across, and it was overall a nice experience. So yeah, that's from my side.
We'll quickly move to the last table. Jayashree, you can continue. I think Radhika is.
So we had Tarun, Sudha, Radhika, and Umesh, and Radhika did the major talking because people were there to understand on how to build a community, how to take it ahead. So I think there were certain keywords that we found out from our room. So the words that we've already discussed, this was support, so that people can make informed decisions. Kindness. Radhika mentioned that during COVID, they had meal planning services. So it was a community. It was a whole community that was built around that at that point of time. And she also mentioned that she's living in Bangalore, so these people have big city living, but now they have small town vibes, so she's trying to build something around that. And Mr. Tarun, he mentioned that he knows people from Google, Microsoft, who would these millennials who would leave their jobs to start helping people to come up with a community wherein then they can start helping. So I think we had more of a generic sort of discussion because people wanted to understand what community actually stands for. So the keywords, like I mentioned, kindness, support each other, you have your back, mutual understanding, and just to help each other. So yeah, that's the general discussion that we had in our room.
Thank you so much, everyone. And before we go, I would like to thank our volunteers for sharing these insights that they have and helping us navigate the discussions.